Hi, welcome back to the channel. The topic in which I will be covering today is somewhat more of a serious topic, and it is something up until 2 weeks ago I had zero knowledge of. And from what I've found in those 2 weeks, when I've been looking at this topic, it is quite disturbing. All that being said, it is the trend that is commonly known as, on social media, the trend known as Looksmaxing. Now, before I unravel this and before I get into this, I just want to say that I think, in of itself, wanting to look after yourself and take good care of your appearance is not a bad thing. Ergo, that be through healthier diets, fitness routine, trying out new clothes, looking after your own hygiene. Those are very positive things that all of us could do and would help you feel better about yourself. The problem that I've found with Looksmaxing is not so much the trend itself or the trend's message. It is the various extreme methods in which people are indulging on this topic. Some of the basic methods used on this with this trend are, again, very positive things, as what I've just said. Looking after dental hygiene, looking after your personal hygiene, fitness routines, skincare routines. These are positive things. But unfortunately, like many online trends, it has become quite more radical and extreme and obsessive and fatally dangerous, not only physically but mentally as well. And that's why I felt that, in of itself, this trend was deserving of a video. So, what is Looksmaxing? Well, Looksmaxing is a trend that began in the 2010s, preferably around 2015 to 2016. And in essence, its function revolves around trying to obtain a unrealistic and unattainable standard of beauty. And many of the critics of the trend have often said these are unrealistic and unattainable qualities. Trying to achieve a peak of physical attractiveness or physical beauty. Now, we all like to try and look our best. I'll make this point very clear. It's a very human trait. We all want to look good. And there's nothing wrong in that to a degree. There's nothing wrong in changing how you dress, how you take care of yourself physically, how you groom yourself. These are all very human and ordinary acts. So that's why I say, in the primal message of the trend, it's a very, very understandable message. But it has kind of snowballed and manifested itself clearly into much more of a radical and extreme following or message. And you could ask, well, why am I doing a video on this? Well, I felt that it did, to an extent, correlate with what this channel is about. When I started off this channel, it was aimed particularly at people who were going into modelling, or who were thinking about going into modelling, who may be doing modelling at this present time. So when I saw this trend, I felt that it did resonate to an extent with what this channel is kind of about, and people wanting to look after themselves, but to a degree. And with the Looksmaxing, I've found that it's kind of moved away from just wanting to look good and become almost like a hierarchy of what is considered the height of physical attractiveness, and it goes down to what isn't, what is completely unattractive, and etc. But that's a whole other thing that I'll get into shortly, because there are quite a few manifestations of this trend that have kind of splintered off. And I think, to anybody who is indulging in these methods, whether that be from the more basic methods, such as just grooming yourself or wanting to look the best you possibly can, not in a sense trying to chase a certain standard that is considered the peak of physical beauty. I'm talking more about working with what you've got. And I think in its early stages, Looksmaxing kind of had that same message, but I believe as it's evolved, it's become much more obsessive and much more about an obsessive behaviour, which many people, I think, are finding with the trend. I mean, this isn't the only video on Looksmaxing. There are many other variable videos out there already on the trend. But I felt I had to kind of come on and do a video about this, because it does resonate to a degree with what my channel is about, and how trying to look after yourself is a good thing, but becoming obsessive about a look that probably doesn't exist. I will go with probably. Maybe it does. Maybe you've seen somebody who looks this certain way, or maybe you've seen pictures of somebody who looks a certain way, and that's what you're trying to achieve, and that's what you're trying to work up to. But in doing that, at the same time putting yourself at risk physically and mentally, which I'll get onto just in a moment, about the most extreme methods of this trend and how they kind of present themselves. But doing it to this degree is dangerous, mentally dangerous, and this topic does need a light shed on it. This doesn't particularly come from a place of judgment or bias. It's more of awareness. And the thing I have to point out is the main demographic audience or users of this trend are predominantly young men, and the ages vary. The main demographic audience are from 16 to 23. But as I say, they vary. There are much older men indulging in this trend, some well into middle age, 40 and 45 above. But it has been noted that there are people as young as 10 to 12 taking part in this trend. So it's how do you talk about this in a way without trying not to offend anyone, because that's the last thing you want to do. There may be somebody who will watch this who is participating in this trend. Maybe not to the degree or the extreme cases as I've just pointed out, but surely if you are, you kind of need somebody to talk, you need to review what you're doing for your mental health and physical health, because from what some of the cases I've seen, it is very drastic and is often unreversible. So the most radical methods that are used within this trend, and the people who indulge in the most radical methods of this trend, are what's known as hard maxers. And the trend is called hard maxing, and it's a manifestation from Looksmaxing itself. It's kind of splintered off into its own kind of life, its own little world. And this is where you will find the most extreme and radical cases. And they are as follow: abusing steroids to ridiculous lengths to obtain a physical, to obtain this bulk of physical strength. But again, often health complications arise from that. Bone lengthening surgery, which obviously kind of what it says on the tin, it's guys who are not happy with their physical stature, so they have surgery to try and enhance their height. Again, often unreversible, and there are health complications that come with it. Starve maxing is another quite dangerous and radical method, in which, again, you literally starve yourself to obtain a level of weight that you consider the standard of attractiveness. Often linked to body dysmorphia, which again is something else completely in itself, but it's linked with that. So when you're watching this, it's easy to think a lot of this is kind of just misinformation, being blown out of proportion, exaggeration, and I think to a degree some of it might be, but I also believe that there is too much evidence here to suggest that this is just misinformation and hearsay. I do think there is a drastic problem and a very fundamental problem really going on with this trend. And as I say, it does correlate with what I'm doing, because I'm going into a profession where looks do matter. It does matter about a certain look, a certain style that you have that can kind of boost your chances within that domain. So it's not something that I don't have any experience with, but to the point in which some of these young men are indulging in these trends, I do think is very dangerous. So how do you tackle something like this? Well, the only way you can tackle something like this is by bringing awareness to it. I understand there's a lot of that going on within the online community. There are many videos that shed light on this topic, and I feel like it's the only way you can kind of tackle something like this, by talking about it and bringing awareness to it. Otherwise, it going unchecked and unsupervised, some young people will be exposed to very drastic and dangerous things that they are not really able to deal with. And as for chasing this look that they consider is the pinnacle of beauty, and they believe that within the Looksmaxing community, they believe that looks are all that matter and that nothing else is relevant, which I do not believe, and I think most people who watch this video will agree that that isn't all that matters. Looks are not all that matter. They do matter, but they are not all that matters in the real world. So modelling aside, that's a separate thing, but in the real world, looks aren't all that matter. But within the Looksmaxing community, and particularly the hard maxing community, that is what they believe, that nothing else is important. Unless you fit this arc of attractiveness, you're going to have no chance in a relationship, and no chance professionally, virtually no chance in life, if you do not meet this requirement of looks. And the most dangerous thing about this is, as I find it, is that there are so many young people under the ages of 18 taking part in this trend. And that's one of the reasons why I felt it relevant and important to come on and do a video. When you are a teenager, you do want to fit in, and you want to look after yourself, and you want to kind of, you look up to people who maybe you shouldn't look up to, but you do. And we've all been there when we were teenagers. We've all done this to a degree. Now, I'm often shielded, and I was as a teenager, from like this because I didn't go on social media. I didn't get any social media till I was around about 16. And then I had it for a very limited amount of time, and then I didn't use it. So I was shielded from a lot of this. And that's why I'm constantly playing catch up, finding out about such trends as Looksmaxing, because I would never, if I hadn't been just scrolling on YouTube one day, I wouldn't have had any idea what this trend was about. And I've kind of looked into it a bit more, and I do think it is generally disturbing. Again, the core message in the beginning, I feel, in itself is not a bad thing. But like many online trends, it can often become much more excessive, much more drastic, much more radical, and people can become obsessed with certain looks that are in many cases unattainable. But still, many young people are participating in this trend. So when you think that looks are all that matter, and that you're not going to get anywhere if you don't have looks, as I say, looks are important to a degree, particularly in the profession I'm going into. Yes, looks do play a part, or a certain look. Because what you have to bear in mind is that looks are subjective. Looks, what one person might find attractive, another person might not. You do have the kind of general agreement over somebody or some person or a certain look that's considered attractive. With film stars or actors or pop stars, you can have this kind of look that is considered in the public space as being attractive. That being said, that doesn't mean that everybody fancies the same thing or everybody's attracted to the same thing. As I say, it's subjective. And as I say, what I've found with this trend is so many people are chasing a certain look that, to all intents and purposes, not everybody will find that look attractive. And it's when I think when you're chasing looks or trying to look a certain way, only in the hope that it will bring you more people will be more attracted to you. And I think that is the wrong way to go about it. I think if you're doing it because you're happy with how you look, and you're doing it for yourself, and it makes you happier, and it makes you more positive, and it makes you enjoy yourself more because you're more confident, then that is a good thing. But just going through a list of very radical and dangerous things, trying to enhance a perceived look of attractiveness, is a dangerous thing. And that's what I think we're finding here with the Looksmaxing. It's not so much positive advice or more general advice that is given to most people, such as, look after yourself. Make sure your hair's washed. Make sure you're shaving. Make sure you wash. You try out new clothes. You experiment with clothes to see what looks good, what suits you. All these things are very relevant and very valid. But when you look at the Looksmaxing, or particularly the hard maxing of very drastic and often irreversible measures that these young men are taking, such as the limb lengthening surgery, starve maxing, bone smashing, and in that instance, it's very much what it says on the tin. It is literally taking a hammer and smashing yourself in the face with it, or smashing your head up a brick wall. Literally smashing your head up a brick wall. And they do this in the belief that the more times you break the bones in your face, for example jawbone or cheekbone, that the more times you do this, it will heal itself and come back more pronounced and more strong and more structured. Of course, there is no real evidence to suggest this. Now, maybe some people be annoyed, or be a bit, and maybe you're doing this, or maybe you know somebody who's doing this, and you may be a bit annoyed at what I'm saying. But I'm asking if you are, or you know anyone who is indulging in this, think about it logically. Why would you do that to your face? Physically hurt yourself in the belief that your bone structure will heal itself and grow back more profound and more structured, when really there is no real medical evidence to back that up. Again, it's on a rumour that if you do this to your face, it will grow back more structured and more chiselled. It's almost you're kind of playing Russian roulette with your body. You can probably do this to a certain extent. You can probably indulge in it to a certain extent, and there's no real comeback. There's no real medical comeback. But there will come a point where most people would go over the top. They would do it to an extent where you're probably left with some quite severe scars. I'm sure this has happened, but it has happened. And there isn't a lot you can do about it aside from, as I just said, bring some awareness to it and kind of try and shed a light on it, and hopefully just help if one person listens or one person takes on board what you're trying to say. Then hopefully it will help them see things through a different lens, and not just through the negative, I don't fit a certain look or fit a certain standard. It is quite human and quite, I don't particularly like the word normal, but it is normal to have an element of self-doubt, to have insecurities about things. It's not a terrible thing when they're manageable. We all have them. And when you have an element of self-doubt, or you start questioning yourself, the best thing to do, in my experience, now this again, it's very vague, the advice I'm giving, it's very vague, but hopefully it does resonate. When you have them elements of self-doubt, the best thing to do is just think about what you're doing logically. Think about it sensibly, so that when you try and actually do some of these extreme methods, would you actually say to yourself, is this going to help? Am I doing this for any reason aside from trying to obtain a look that more than likely doesn't exist? That more than likely is something that has been conjured up to show you this is the peak of physical attractiveness and anything else is inconsequential and subservient to that. But no, that's not what, not everybody should look a certain way. We shouldn't all just chase the same standard. Because as I say, looks are subjective. What one person might find attractive, the other person will think completely differently about. So you have to think about it sensibly and logically. Now I understand that there are people who are doing this trend, who are involved in this trend, who are very young, who are under the age of 18. 16, 15, 14, and say some even documented to being as young as 10 or 12. So, these are people who are very naive and are easily influenced by elder people or even people around them. And I understand that. I understand that at that age, you do really worry about how you look when you're at school and things like that. That's absolutely, and that's, again, perfectly normal, quote unquote normal. But you should be happy to a degree with what you've got anyway. And there are ways in which you can enhance your look and how you look. And I was talking about this with somebody else. I often think when you're a teenager, it's kind of a weird age in that you can grow into your look as you get older. And not necessarily when you're 15, 16, 17. You may not be happy with how you look. But as you grow older, as long as you look after yourself, where through legitimate avenues of healthier diets, drinking more water, light exercise, ways of keeping yourself fit, it's often true that the more you do that through natural ways, you end up becoming more happy with how you look. And you can grow into a look as you get older. But it seems a lot of young people are just jumping in at the deep end and doing very dangerous and hazardous things. And it may not be a lot. I may be guilty of blowing this slightly out of proportion. I don't know. It's something that I'm very new to. I've looked into it quite extensively over the last couple of weeks, but I'm quite new to it. So maybe I'm blowing it out of proportion to an extent. But I do believe, nevertheless, that there is enough evidence here to suggest that this isn't just hearsay and there is something really dangerous going on within this online community of Looksmaxers and even more so hard maxers. And I feel that the only way you can tackle it is by talking about it and by bringing awareness to it. And that's why I decided to make a video on Looksmaxing. Even though I'm very much a novice to the subject, I don't know, I haven't got an extensive knowledge on it. But I think I've gleaned enough to say, okay, this is deserving of a video all by itself. There are many ways to look after yourself. Whether that be through wanting to look after how your skin is, there are skincare routines, there are skin lotions which you can use. There are physical activities which you can participate in, and it isn't just about a gym membership. I sometimes feel that gym memberships are kind of, I understand it has its place, going to a gym. I understand it works for a lot of people, but I do in some ways feel that it is kind of a bit overestimated. I think we're a bit gym heavy in this era. I think there are other ways besides just working out in a gym all day, which again is, I understand it works for a lot of people, but there are other means in which you can go about it. For example, walking, swimming are two of the best forms of exercise that you will find, because it's one thing working out in the gym, which is great to build up, and I feel a lot of the self-image that these young men feel who indulge in Looksmaxing feel that because they may not be very muscular in big frame, I think to a degree that kind of plays into the feeling of inadequacy. That may, and again, I'm just talking out loud. I'm just saying what I think. There's nothing. I'm not saying this is factual. I just feel that because in this culture, in this era, we are very gym heavy, that many young men who may not be particularly muscular do. That's where some of the feeling of inadequacy may come from. Again, that's just my opinion. That might not be the case, but that's what I think. And as I say, there are many ways to work out or look after yourself physically without having to bulk up and be ridiculously, hench, which is a word that's used. Because cardio exercise is something completely different. And I don't think in the Looksmaxing community they particularly touch on Looksmaxing about how cardio helps a lot. Physical bodily exercise through a gym is a completely different thing, and again is something that is pushed throughout the Looksmaxing about having to be, again, not only facially look a certain standard, but also your body has to be to a perfect standard within being muscular, built, and etc. And again, I feel that's what plays into a lot of the feeling of an inadequacy young men have. But as I say, it's all subjective. Not everybody thinks that's the be all and end all. Not everybody. And as you get older, because you have to bear in mind, a lot of these people are very, very young. But as you get older, you'll realise that it's not the be all and end all having a huge physique. It really isn't. Yeah, I'm sure it's great if you are, but it's not the be all and end all. It doesn't really, in everyday life or everyday society, really change much whether what your physique is, unless you're going into a certain industry or particular, like with the modelling. There's so many different looks in modelling. I'm one look that some people might like, some others may not. Like I say, I would knock back with the first agency. I obviously wasn't what they were looking for, and you'll find that true in life in any situation where you put yourself out there. Some people will find you'll see something there, others won't, and it's not the end of the world. It doesn't make you any less of a person. It's just human nature. It's just that's how it's just human nature. Looks are subjective, and the problem I find with Looksmaxing is how it continually obsesses and focuses on one look of being muscled, of having the chiseled jaws that, again, are often unattainable. They're not particularly realistic in what they're going after or what they're promoting to people. And again, young men, well, not even men, teenage boys, are falling into this trap. And there isn't a lot you can do aside from talk about it. And that's why this video has been made. Hopefully somebody will see this video and hopefully they will get something positive from it. I hope. Again, you can't change it overnight. It's not going to change overnight, but I believe the more people who talk about it, who bring awareness to it, that's the only way you're going to tackle this. There are simple things to do to make yourself feel better about yourself, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. It's the simplest of things. Just going for a walk, just enjoying time with family and friends, the important things that matter. These are the things that you need to focus on, not what somebody is telling you who you don't. Somebody on one of these trends, on one of these sites, these Looksmaxing sites, telling you that you need to look a certain way, you need to get down the gym 7 times a day, 7 days a week, and if you don't do that, you're not a real man, and all this thing that I know is quite, even though I'm not on social media, I know to an extent that there are these mindsets on there, and people promoting this ideology of you need to work out 24/7 and you need to do this and you need to do that, which is not true at all. I think it's important to look after yourself. I think it's important to take care of yourself, but you're not any less of a person if you don't have a physique that these people consider the pinnacle of physical beauty, because it really isn't the case. It comes in all forms, and within the modelling arena, it's the same thing. You send out to agencies, certain agencies will like what your image is and like how you look. Other agencies, you're not what they're looking for, but it's not a personal attack. It's not something that you should take personally. It's the same with any form of rejection. With everybody at some point gets rejected, but it's not the end of the world. And listening to people who are telling you that you will never have any luck, whether that be romantically, occupationally, in any because you don't, in any circumstance, because you don't look a certain way, is just absolutely cobblers. And again, some people might radically disagree with me. They might zealously disagree with me and agree with what these other people are telling them. I don't. And I think the only way we're going to tackle it is by talking about it, by me opening my mouth. And I thought, what better to do on a Wednesday afternoon than make a YouTube video about Looksmaxing. So that's what I've come on and done. I hope it resonates with somebody. And remember, now, it's not coming from a place. If you are a young person and you are doing this, or you are thinking about doing it, it's not coming from a place of judgment or bias. It's not your fault. You're being told this by people who know what they're doing and are pushing these ridiculous standards on you, and it's not your fault. All you have to do is remember that what you're told in many online sectors, in many online circles, in reality is not the truth. On the online world and reality are two completely different things. But it's not your fault if you're young and you're caught up in this. Maybe people won't even watch. I don't know. Maybe someone who's watching this hasn't got a clue what Looksmaxing is. But even in that sense, it's still rising awareness to it. But as I say, it's not from a place. I'm just trying to make people aware of what it is, and to anyone who may be caught up in it or may have gone down this route and actually been involved in this, it's not a place of judgment. It's judgment on the people who are pushing this kind of propaganda. So that's what I wanted to say. That's what I wanted to do the video about. Thank you to anyone who watches, and I hope that somebody, if it helps somebody, then that's all you can do. Usually I upload the videos on a Sunday, but I thought, well, I'll do it today on a Wednesday, because I did want to really talk about this. I did think it was very important. I thought it was very pertinent to come on and talk about, so I brought it a bit earlier. But I will be doing a video on Sunday. I don't know what it'll be about yet. If you want to find out, you'll have to watch the video. If you don't care, you don't care. Whatever. So thank you to anyone watching. I hope everyone's doing well who has watched the previous videos. I hope they come back for more. but I'll have to be seen. So the next video will be on Sunday, and peace out.